Alrighty, well, good afternoon and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrew Doffany. I'm the Instruction and Outreach Librarian at the New Jersey State Library, and it is my pleasure to present our speaker for today, Kenneth Fowlkes, who works as a supervisor in the Office of Resilience in the Department of Children and Family Services. Ken has worked in the field of child welfare for over 40 years and has held a number of positions, including Clinical Director of Juvenile Sex Offender Programs, Director of Residential Services, District Office Manager for the Camden Local Office, as well as in different capacities within the Department of Children and Families. He has a bachelor's degree from Rutgers University, Camden, and a master's degree from Morehead State University in adult education and counseling. So welcome, Ken. Thank you so much for coming and speaking with our audience today on what your office does, the Office of Resilience, and the importance of resilience. So we really look forward um, to what you're going to be covering today.
All right, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Um,
Um, we we're going to talk about trauma, and that's what my office really deals with. Our goal is
What
to make this.
well, before we jump in, I just want to just go over a couple
Oh,
things for our audience. First and foremost, we'll be taking your questions at the end of Ken's talk today. So you can submit your questions though at any time using the Q&A or the chat feature in the Zoom dashboard. Um, there will be a survey available at the end of the webinar. So if you have any feedback that you would like to give us, we always appreciate anything that you want to tell us. There is no handout for today, but there are a couple of resources that you may be interested in that are going to be brought up in the presentation. If there's anything that you are interested in getting a copy of or learning more of, we will be making Ken's contact information available, so you can reach out to him and he can get you that information as you need it. And if you want more information about the Office of Resilience and their services, their web address is on the screen there, and I will be sending that out in the chat momentarily so that you can have a live link to it. And then one last thing, I promise, just a brief overview of the Zoom dashboard. This is what your dashboard should look like if you're using a PC or a Mac. If you're using a mobile device, the dashboard may look a little bit different, but all of the features will still be there. In the bottom left-hand corner, you can check your audio settings. So if you're using an external listening device like a headset or earbuds, you can check to make sure it's connected properly there. At any point during the presentation, if you have any issues, there is a raise hand button here in the middle. You can click on that. That'll alert me. I will send you a message in Zoom and hopefully be able to resolve any problems that you are having. And then, as I mentioned, if you do have questions, you have the Q&A or the chat buttons. You can use either of them to get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to address those questions again at the end of Ken's talk. So, all right, that is it for me now. So, Ken, you can take it away.
all right, thank you. Um, where did I leave off at? Okay, I know where it was. Okay, we're going to be talking about the impact of trauma, and our office is trying to get that information out to you. We are really concerned about how trauma is affecting the state of New Jersey. And so about 4 or 5 years ago, the governor, in his wisdom, decided that we needed an Office of Resilience in the Department of Children and Family. And so I've been there from almost day one. And our goal is to make the state trauma informed, to make sure that they understand the impact of trauma. So in my office, we're a small but mighty group. Our director is Rebecca Bryant, who's been with us for, I think, almost 2 years now. And her role is to give us guidance on how to get this information out to you. And as you see, we have 7 people in our office, and we're responsible for the whole state. So our goal is to, get this information out to the state, but we need help with that because 7 people can't do it. So we're trying to get the information out to as many people as possible about the importance of understanding trauma and its impact on everyday life. So the first thing I want to do is start to look at how do we define trauma. So we define trauma as when we experience a very stressful, frightening, or disturbing event that are difficult to cope with. So I mean, everybody deals with trauma. Everybody has trauma. I don't care whether you're the CEO or you're the maintenance person, whether you're employed or unemployed. Trauma occurs to every person at some time sooner or later. So what is the impact of trauma? Well, one is on your body. We have, five responses in general from when we're dealing with a traumatic situation. And it used to be three when I first started, but they added two more. So it used to be just flight, fight, or freeze. Now we added flop and fawn. And we generally, in those crisis situations, fall back to one of those five. And so it also affects our feelings because we act out the trauma often. So what we see as anger may be a response to trauma. When people are confused or irritated, a lot of times it's because of trauma and the impact of trauma. It also can cause a physical result. A lot of people who are dealing with trauma will have headaches, will have stomach problems, will have aches and pains. And trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you. And there are cultural issues that we have to look at when we look at trauma. Our past a lot of times dictate how we respond to trauma. And we don't understand how we pass it on from generation to generation, but we do. And I'll give you an example of that. My father is a minister. So we would travel from church to church for my father to preach sometimes. And when we were going to like Edison or Toms River or somewhere up north or even Pennsylvania, it would stop often and it would be a good trip for us. It would be an adventure for us. And so we enjoyed it. But when we traveled south, my dad's attitude changed. All of a sudden, we don't get bathroom breaks. So he would tell us, in a kind of mean way that go to the bathroom now because we're not stopping. And he never explained why until I was much older. When he talked about his life experience of being a Marine and being in uniform and returning back to his base in North Carolina, not being able to eat or drink it. And so he brought that back with him, and it affected his parenting style. So those things just don't go away. They kind of are inside your parents and they pass it on to you. And a lot of times it is a form of survival for them. And they want you to survive, so they pass those information or those skills that they believe that will help you survive in a very tough situation. And there are other things like, the roles of gender, forced family separation, particularly to Native American population, and the harmful norms that we have in our community. One of those harmful norms may be that we don't share feelings or we don't talk about feelings. That's a norm that may not be beneficial to you. And then we look at adverse childhood experience. Adverse childhood experience has an impact on how you operate as an adult. And as you can see from the tree, the roots are our community experience, our history. And that leads to some of the experience. And, we look at this tree and we see if you grow up in a home where there's domestic violence, that clearly has an impact on how you see violence. If you grow up in a home where there's divorce or there's emotional or sexual abuse, all those things add up and it can impact on how you deal with society as an adult. And you have to look at, the trees and say, how has my life been impacted by those kind of environments, and what can change that experience? But there's also good news. The ACEs aren't identifying who you are. ACEs just give you a kind of a history of what your issues were as a child. but it doesn't dictate where you're going to be successful or not. A lot of people who have high ACE scores are very successful human beings and well adjusted, and some people who have low ACE scores aren't, because there's other factors that impact that. And one is positive childhood experience, and that's very, very important. And I'm just going to go over them briefly. One is feeling like you can talk about your feelings with family. When you're feeling down as a child, can you express that to your family without being penalized? You know, and a lot of families, that's not an option. You know, in some families I've worked with in the past, I've heard the phrase "children are to be seen and not heard." So if that's true, then who do they talk to when they're feeling bad, when they're having all kinds of issues? If they can't talk to your family, that can make your life very difficult. And as adults, we have to understand that children have different feelings than we have. And I always tell the story about when I was bused as a child. I was in fourth grade, fifth grade. And you have to be signed up to be bused. And my parents signed me up. And they were very proud that I was picked to be bused. But as a child, I'm thinking, what are they doing to me? Where am I going? Why can't I go to the school 2 blocks away? Why do I have to go halfway across Philadelphia to go to school? Why do I have to get up early? This is scary. And I think adjustment would be better if I was allowed to share those feelings, and it would help me adjust to anything that was negative. Feeling supported by family during difficult times. When things happen, and the family kind of gathers around you, supports you, it helps you develop those skills you need. Enjoying participation in community traditions. Think about, all the positive feelings you had when you were part of your community, when you were part of a walk for breast cancer, when you participated in a sporting event, how it made you feel, how it made you feel like you were part of something. Feeling you belonged in your high school, participating in your high school, having support from your teachers. We look at positive childhood experience, we tend to look at what's in the home. But I can tell you that teachers, coaches can make a difference. Ministers in church can make a difference. We have the opportunity day to day to provide positive childhood experience to young people. Just having a conversation with them, talking about your experience, sharing your experience. I had my grandfather, well, actually my great grandfather was alive when I was like 10, 12 years old. I used to sit at his feet and listen to him talking about farming and how important farming was, and how he enjoyed it. And that to me gave me a feeling of belonging. So it happens in school, it happens in community events. Now, one thing I found out later on, that farming is hard work, and I really don't want to do it. So, but when I was a kid, I wanted to be a farmer. And then my grandmother told me that he was a horrible farmer too. So that kind of destroyed my belief in my farming. But it gave me a sense of belonging to my family. And in school, I ran track. It gave me a sense of belonging to my school. So when I didn't feel really good, there were places that I could go and talk to people. Being supported by your friends. Having friends is important. And those friends being supportive of you. And being supportive of you doesn't mean that you agree with everything that your friends are doing. It's the friends that value you enough to tell you what's a good behavior and what's a bad behavior. Having at least two non-parent adults who take genuine interest in you. And that goes back to your minister, your coaches, your social workers, your people in the community who really care about you. I coached basketball for about 15 years, and it's surprising how much I had an impact on those youth. And they come up to me and they thank me for being their coach. And we weren't that good. We were okay. But they could talk to me about their issues. And they saw me as a role model. I wasn't their parent, but I was still a role model. And you can play that role in your community. You can mentor children so that they see a positive influence in their life. At a certain age, it is hard to talk to your parents. You know, I can tell you that at 15, 16, 17, I really didn't interact that much with my parents. Good people, fed me, didn't abuse me, all those wonderful things, but I didn't interact with them much. And it wasn't because they didn't try. It was just that's how it played out. And at a certain age, I have two sons, and that when they turned 14, 15, 16 years old, they were more involved with their friends. They played sports. They spent more time with coaches, with their teammates. And so even though I tried to be a positive influence and I really worked hard to be a positive influence, there were other people who reinforced some of my values that made it easier for them to do the right kind of things. And it's funny, I always tell people I give my kids advice and I think they're not listening. And then maybe 3 or 4 months later, they'll say, "Oh, I did exactly what you said," but they don't give me credit. Well, I talked to my coach, and he said I should do this. But having that reinforcement from non-parent adults who really care about youth can make a difference with them because these are all the skills they're going to need as they become adults to be resilient. The other one I think we can never underestimate is feeling safe and protected by an adult in the home. Just knowing that when you go home, that you're going to have the care and support you need. And the funny part about this is that it isn't just about childhood. Those skills that we talked about for positive childhood experience is also useful in adulthood. Feeling supported at home, having a safe feeling at work, that you enjoy your work, you have people around you who can be supportive to you. Those things carry on to your adulthood. So it doesn't just stop at your childhood. It carries on into adulthood. Now, we have 10 domains. We have a trust assessment tool that looks at 10 domains. As far as, being trauma informed and these are the 10 domains that we look at. Leadership. We look at policy. The physical environment. When you go to work, do you feel like your environment is conducive to help you do your job? There are things that you can look at when you look at physical environment, such as lighting, such as, your chair, where you sit, what kind of activities you can have. Are you engaged and are you involved? Those things are important too. We have to, engagement to people around you and involvement in people around you will kind of help you deal with those kind of situations. So these are some of the things we measure. Cross-sector collaboration, screening, assessment, and treatment, training and work development. These are all important things that we evaluate as part of our assessment tool. And that we look at this kind of see where we at as far as are we trauma informed? Because being trauma informed is so very important. Training and workforce development, just getting somebody a job, isn't enough. You have to help them develop into a good worker. And then we go back to some of the things we talked about in the last slide, with having that kind of support. Doing the evaluation. Is there enough financing to make sure that we're able to kind of make us trauma informed? So this whole the 10 domains are very important as we look at making sure that we are trauma informed and looking at our trust assessment tool. This is something we have just found, we're just putting out. Just assessing, because that's important. A lot of people say they're trauma informed, but how do you know you're trauma informed? Just because you say that makes you trauma informed, or is there a measurement tool that's needed using the 10 domains to make you or help you understand whether you're trauma informed or not? And we have this available now. I would reach out to the Office of Resilience to talk about our trust assessment tool and see how we can make it available to you, because it will give you a good measurement on where you are at being trauma informed. And it's good for churches, it's good for government agencies, it's good for nonprofit, it's good for police departments, it's good for any organization that really wants to look at being trauma. And I think that it's in this time of trauma and all the violence and all the nonsense that is going on throughout the country, we have to make sure that our people are trauma informed. We have to make sure they understand the importance of being trauma informed. And so this tool helps you kind of figure out where you are as far as trauma informed, and can give you a plan to improve your trauma informed. We have goals in our office too. Again, one is making sure that the state becomes trauma informed and that we are healing centered. And that goes back to, is trying to understand what happened to you, not why you did it or what you did, but what really happened to you to cause you to behave in a certain way. Even though we talk about childhood experience, and we talk about adverse childhood experience, we think, we don't stop developing it just because we turn 18. So when we look at what happened to you in trauma informed, we have to look at it, the whole continuation of how we develop. I can tell you that if you ask me what my ACE score was at 18 and under, I probably have a 1. If you ask if you raise the age up to 21, it moves up to a 4 and 5, because things happened in those 3 or 4 years that impacted on how I deal with trauma. So I think when we look at trauma and being trauma informed, I think it doesn't stop at 18. We didn't develop all our skills at 18, and we can always learn. So whatever things that happen to us that cause us to react a certain way, we can always learn to be better. We can always learn to try to be more understanding and to look at why, and then and what happened to you, and so that we can help you heal. If you have children, because I have 2, like I said, if you kind of look at them from a different perspective, then it'll help you change their behavior. So it's something that you can use as a parent, as a supervisor, as a person who works in the community. We also have foundational training. We're trying to get the word out, and we're trying to do training to make the community trauma informed. So we're offering an 8-hour training broken into 2 different days, 4 hours apiece. And we're offering that training for free. The kind of training that we're offering, for most places, you would have to pay for, and you have to pay a lot of money for it. But we're thinking it's so important to get this training out to the community that we, the state, are offering it for free because we know it's needed. And what we go over in those 8 hours is the basics the basic foundation for being trauma informed. So you get an understanding of how trauma impacts on you, how it impacts on your body, your mind, your work performance, how it impacts on your family life. And as we look at this, and we look at within ourselves, then we find out that we're better able to deal with those more difficult situations. And I know the young lady who pulled the training together, and she did such a great job. This training is full of substance. And I think that if anybody who takes that training walks away with such a opportunity for growth. It's one of my co-workers who pulled it, who kind of designed and pulled the training with Katia. But I've sat through that training, as she helped develop it. And what I felt was like, should be for everybody. Where you're in business, where you're in education, where you work for the state, it doesn't matter. This training will help you kind of see your world a little differently and will improve your ability to manage, to work with your clientele, with your family. And that's how important I think this training is. And we offer it for free. You can contact us for more information on how to get the training. We come to you. So it's not one of those trainings where you have, like where you have to come to Trenton or you have to come to New Brunswick or, we will come to your site to do this training because we feel that it's important that it gets into the community. And at some point later on, where we'll have a train the trainer, where we will go and we will train people to do that training within their own community because, like I said, we only have 7 people. We have 21 counties. I think we're like, 7, 8 million people. So we can't reach all those people. We can't reach all aspects of the community. So by training the trainers, we're able to give this knowledge to communities that really need this knowledge. And we really want those communities who are kind of not part of the social work world, because this is not a social work thing. This is a human being thing. So we're working with police departments to get this training. We're working with state agencies to get this training. We're working with churches to get this training because we want this training to be throughout the state, and we want it to go to people who generally wouldn't normally receive this kind of training, because we feel like this training about the impact of trauma is very, very important. So, and we know that, a lot of agencies, a lot of churches can't afford to pay $3,000, $4,000, $10,000 for this kind of training. And as a state agency, we want to make sure we get this information out. We're also looking at doing some organizational coaching after you take the trust tool. And if you're interested in being part of coaching, then we would be interested in a conversation with you. Because we want to explain what our expectations are. We want to explain what we want to do and what our expectation of you is. So in coaching is we're looking at 10 organizations in year 1, where we're going to help you by mentoring you and helping you set goals, and then helping you develop those skills needed to make your your organization trauma informed. And we're going to look at it from a perspective of education, motivation, and support. We want to give you the knowledge so that you can reach your full potential. It's very important that you understand that when you're trying to become trauma informed, you're not walking alone. You're walking with people who we've been doing this for a while. We kind of know what it needs to become trauma informed and have a system where trauma is understood. So what we're trying to teach you is that how to utilize resilience and becoming trauma informed throughout your whole agency, throughout your whole community, throughout your whole church. We really want to be there for you. So we're going to do 10 organizations in the first year. It may be more. If we find out that, like there's a lot of need for it and we have the ability to budget our time to take more agencies, then there's a chance we'll do that. But right now, we're trying to target 10. So if that's something you may be interested in making your organization one of those 10, please reach out to us. We're interested in having that conversation. We're interested in talking about how you fit. Trauma, we really want to make trauma, our state trauma informed. So we're really trying to do the work. If you want to have a conversation with us about what this looks like, I'll come to you. I can't speak to my other work partners in this, but I know I've been in all 21 counties talking about the need to be trauma informed. I've talked to churches. I talked to boys and girls clubs. I talked to art programs because it's for everybody. I've talked to police departments. We really want to make this state a trauma-informed state, and because we feel like it's important and it will allow our citizens to have a better quality of life. So let's talk about some of the things we've done over the last 4 or 5 years. For 2 years, we actually had a micro grant program. And we took organizations that didn't normally receive state funding and gave them some funding to do trauma work. And it wasn't always what we wanted it to look like. We allowed the community to design programs and to vote on which grants should go through. And it was interesting because there's things I didn't think of that they came up with. There was one program dealing with horses, not even riding horses, but learning to care for horses. And I said to myself, no horses, they're going to just pet them, and how therapeutic is that? I was dead wrong. I will acknowledge I was clueless on that one. I went to see the organization and the youth that was participating in the program, and the interaction between the youth and the horses were amazing. If it was just left up to me to decide what was going to be funded, that may not have made it through. But because we let the community decide, there was some good programming that I would never have thought about. The state would never have thought about funding that received funding and allow youth and families to grow. So I think that we had 23 awardees in the first round and 25 in the second. It was just the result, which is wonderful, and it was one of the best things that I think the state could have ever done. The other thing we did was a police youth initiative. We picked 8 police departments in South Jersey, and we gave them some funding to do police youth interaction. They did summer camps. They did where they dropped into housing development and started cooking burgers and hot dogs. But the police themselves had to interact with the youth on a one-on-one basis, on a group basis. We paid for some police academies and all kinds of interesting and fun stuff that the police and youth were able to do together. And I'm going to talk about one of the police departments. One of the police departments was very reluctant to take the funding. They just said, like, I don't know, we're not comfortable. So I actually drove down. Some days were coming from my house and drove up and kind of talked them into it. They have thanked us so much because it impacted on how they police, and helped change the interaction with the community. And then once the funding ended, they continued with that kind of programming because it worked so well in changing the dynamic between the community and children and the police. And the reason why it's important and how that's resilient, because one of the historical trauma that certain communities have dealt with is police interaction. And instead of just criticizing it and pointing out, we have to change it. And that was our attempt to show that it could be changed. And the results were was wonderful. It was something that I take a lot of pride in. We ran into a situation with a school that had where they were a problem with kids who couldn't see the board, and we were able to connect them with a free glasses program out of Florida that sent two pair of glasses to kids of poverty. We also have had cross-sector real talk sessions with schools, law enforcement, and faith-based groups. We recently had a youth conference at Stockton, in which we had over 100 youth from about 25 different schools from the 5 lower counties. We also had a faith-based symposium, which we had a lot of church leaders to talk about how we can break down those silos. And again, we talk about free trauma-informed foundation training, and we're planning a statewide youth summit for youth who are involved in the systems. Youth who are involved in, the mental health system, who are involved in the child welfare system, and they're planning it. It's not us. One of the things I've done on our 2 youth conference is stepped away from the planning, giving them guidance, telling them what they can do kind of budget-wise and state policy-wise. But the topics in both youth conference will be, the one in Stockton was picked by the youth. And the one that we're having in January will be picked by you. They're going to pick the menu. They're going to pick the speakers. They're going to pick the topics. But it's all youth driven because we feel like that the community, which includes youth, should be the drivers. We should be the map readers, but they're the drivers. They're the ones who are going to tell us what those communities need and what they're interested in. The state of Trenton, had a bad habit historically of coming down to communities and saying, well, this is what you need and you better take the money and you're going to do what we tell you to do. And our attitude is, and the state attitude and the DCF attitude now is, we want to be involved. We want you to be involved in the decision making. We want you to be involved in the planning. We want you to drive the bus. You tell us where we need to go. And that's a change for us. And at some level, it's very difficult for us to accept, but it's the best way. And that's what we're really focused on, hearing from the community, hearing from the people who are receiving the service and listening to them and trying to figure out how do we help them grow. I think the next one, okay. So I think I'm right on time. So where do we go from here? Where we go from here is that we want to continue to partner with you. We want to continue to develop trauma-informed knowledge within the community and practice. So it's not just enough to have the knowledge. What are you going to do with the knowledge? How does that knowledge change how you operate? So what I ask the people who are listening is think about it. How does trauma impact on you as a person? How does trauma impact on your family? How does trauma impact on the different communities that you are a member of? Because I will tell you, people think that there's one community. I'm a member of 4 or 5 communities. I'm a member of my fraternity community. I'm a member of my work community. I'm a member of my basketball community. So I'm in different communities. So how does my trauma impact on how I operate in those communities? So and so, what can I learn about my trauma and that it can cause me to cause change in myself and cause change in my community? That's where I want you to start thinking about. And the foundational training, if you're interested in learning more about trauma and the impact of trauma, please talk to us about how do we organize a training for your community, for your office, for your church. How do we get that message out that trauma impacts on everybody, not just on the poor or ethnic groups, or it's everybody. And we also have to start looking at groups differently. We think that there's subcultures that are unique and different, and we have to be culturally sensitive as we interact with them. One of the things I tell people is, people say, well, the Black community. Well, there's no real one Black community. I know that because my wife is from Georgia and I'm from New Jersey, and our roots and our communities experience are totally different. So start looking at people as individuals and how do we grow as individuals and how do we grow and get past those traumas, historical and recent traumas, so that we're better human beings. Do we have any questions?
Alrighty. If anybody does have questions, again, you can use the Q&A or the chat to get in touch with us, and we can address them. Are you including Spanish speakers?
We have the ability to do some training with the Spanish community. We also have some ability to do some trainings with the Haitian community. And as we look at train the trainers, we're looking for people who speak other language. New Jersey is from a language perspective, is one of the most diverse states in the country, if not the most diverse. We're finding that there's a large Arabic community. And so we want to reach to those communities when it comes to trauma, because some of those communities come with trauma when they came to this country. Some of those communities are dealing with trauma in this country. And so we need to reach those communities. So if you are bilingual, if you have a unique ability to speak a foreign language, then we would love to have you become part of our trainer, come to our foundational training, learn to be a trainer, so that you can go into those communities and teach them about trauma and resilience and how to become more resilient and deal with trauma.
If we are interested in the coaching opportunity, how would one connect with you for that?
Uh, Reach out to our office. We want to hear from people. We want to hear from people who might be interested. We want to talk about what that looks like. We want to talk about how where that's you really want to do, because it requires you to be out there in communities. And if you're talking about being coached, then yes, that's important that we have that conversation. If you see yourself as being part of the coaching aspect, then we have to talk about that too. Because I want to tell you, we're at the beginning stage. We're creating this. There's nothing etched in stone right now, but we're really creating this right now and trying to see what works and what doesn't work. This has not been done any place else at this level. I mean, some people have done snippets of it, but New Jersey's ahead of the curve when it comes to making people trauma informed. And so we would like we would welcome any input that you have at any aspect of how we can get this information out into the community, how that we can get the training to different groups. So we need the guidance. We want the guidance because we don't have all the answers, to be honest. Because like we're inventing something that hasn't been done before, definitely in the state of New Jersey and probably nationwide. People from different states have been calling us to figure out how did y'all do what you did? How did y'all come up with these programs? So but came up with these programs because we're listening to the community and we're listening to people. So yes, please reach out to us. And like we'll meet with you. We'll have a whole conversation with you. Like I said, I go all throughout the state, to talk to people about what we do and the opportunities we have. So we're looking for partners. We're looking for, ideas. And so we're open to those conversations.
Alrighty. I'm just waiting to see if there are any other questions
Well,
um, that that can come in. How if you can speak, how has the governor responded to some of your efforts, and is there a push to increase maybe your funding or your um, or promoting you in more substantial ways?
well, I'm going to give the governor high marks because this came out of the governor's office. This came out of the governor's office. This is not, I wasn't sitting around, say, oh, maybe I can come up with an office of resilience. I would tell you that I was close to retiring. I'm at that age bracket where I could retire. And this came up, and I had a conversation with some of the powers that be out of the governor's office and out of the Department of Children and Families, and I got excited. And I said, I'll stay. I'm going to do this. So the governor has been a great support for us and has really pushed the idea of making the state trauma informed. So I give him high marks on pushing this agenda. Funding, the funding dictates on the budget, and what we get in revenue and stuff like that. He's been supportive in providing us staff. The commissioner has been supportive in providing us funding for some of our special projects. So we've gotten support from particularly our commissioner. Our commissioner has been a great fan of the Office of Resilience. I would tell you that I'm thankful that we have the commissioner that we have because she has been wonderful in supporting us. And I came up, with the idea with another worker of doing a youth police initiative. And so we went to her and we're thinking, it's going to be, it's going to be a push. But when she heard the idea, she embraced it. When we came up with our youth conference, the first one she embraced that, and based on that conference, she gave me the go ahead to do a second one. So the state as a whole has really allowed us to be very creative. And like I said, I'm very glad that we had that support. And I will tell you this too, that in other states, they're not getting that support. Their Office of Resilience in a lot of states is one person. So, like I said, people are coming to us from other states to kind of figure out how do we do what y'all do.
Alrighty, I don't see any other questions. Anything you'd like to end with, Ken, before we
Well,
wrap up?
I'm gonna, Sophia, do you want to like to? Sophia is one of our community faith-based navigator. Um, do you want to add something, Sophia?
No, thank you so much, Ken. It was a pleasure being here with all of you. I hope the information that was provided today was helpful to any of you. And again, the office is open to traveling. And so if you have any interest in either the training or the foundational training or the coaching or becoming an anchor organization, please feel free to reach out to us.
I would go a step further and say, if you just want to discuss trauma, if you just want to discuss this resilience, we're open to having that conversation. We want to have that interaction with the community, and we want to have that discussion. And I did see one question about coaching, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, will coaches receive payment for their work?
We're having, well, the first initial coaching will be by us because we have to figure this out. And then down the line, that's a question that we would have with our funding source at the state and stuff like that. I'm not going to say no or yes. I'm going to say that we're in the building stage. And so we have to figure this all out. And like I said, we're figuring this out as we go along. So, I mean, that's not a real answer. I know that because I don't really have the real answer because we're trying to figure this out. But I know the first set of coaching will be done by us because we have to learn, we have to figure out what coaching means because we have to define it. And once we define it, then we take the next step.
All right. I don't see any other questions. So again, thank you so much, Ken and Sophia, for presenting today and letting us into this wonderful work and world that you're a part of. And I hope that we can promote this and utilize this service moving forward. I think it's great and something that our state really needs, especially our government as we try to move forward.
I'm just going to say thank you for the opportunity. And I hope this whets your beak. I hope this gets some interest in that you want to have a conversation with us, you want to talk to us, because I just think that this is such an important work. And, and this is the reason why I've stayed on in the state for the last couple of years, because I really believe that this will make a difference in how we operate as a state. So thank you for the opportunity and thank you for giving me the chance. I could have, if they had given me 3 or 4 hours more, I could still be talking about what we do and how important it is to be resilient and to be trauma-informed.
Again, thank you, Jen, or thank you, Ken. Thank you, Sophia. This program is being recorded. So if you missed anything, we will be sending that out to everybody. I will also include all the contact information in a follow-up email as well, so that you can reach out for any more information or resources that you want. So, and I'd just like to also thank everybody for attending today. Everybody be safe, be well, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.